COVID inquiry coming to Canada, folks. That's what we're going to talk about, among other things, right now for the week ahead. Thanks for tuning in. And we're going to talk about some couple of tragic deaths that occurred and a mind blowing element that is going to surprise you. I'm going to keep that a secret. Watch right now as we jump into the weekend edition for you. What to look ahead for the week ahead. Yes, COVID inquiries coming to Canada. There are a number of individuals, groups, a member of Parliament by the name of Dean Allison and others who are holding and raising the question of what took place during the COVID agenda. Why was so much so many of the concerns not being allowed to be talked about? Why were doctors threatened with being fired? Why were nurse practitioners and others either totally blacklisted or told that they had to find work elsewhere? What about all of these millions and millions of dollars that are supposed to go to so-called the unexplained or unanticipated injuries relative to the vaccines? Nobody here is saying there should be no such thing as vaccines. The way the COVID agenda was applied is very concerning, and sweeping concerns have rocked the United States and Europe, and now it's coming to Canada. So stay tuned. You're going to see more of that this week, but the couple of main hearings are September the 8th to the 11th, and people are asking for a full government inquiry there. Okay, let's jump right back to the Middle East, where we'd like to start and where we'd like to leave, actually. A couple of items there. The foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, has said no more talks. So this is wild and crazy stuff. Obviously, Iran is not worried about a huge attack from the United States. At least that's what it appears. Trump saying they are still considering that. Meanwhile, price of gas since the war started is up 20%, and that affects, or 29%, and that affects people in the U.S. and in Canada, matter of fact, around the world. So we're going to see what happens there, because one of President Trump's promises at the start of his term was going to lower the cost of energy to consumers. We'll see what happens. And another area that we're seeing considerable pressure coming under the White House and the Republicans. They had promised to reduce the debt. It has gone up instead of gone down. Now people can blame the war and everything else, but the thing is, that's what is being held accountable for. So we'll see what happens. Also coming out are reports, and we talked about this 2 days ago in a little more detail, where we have reports about the effects on the U.S. military, for instance, aboard the massive aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. A lot of talk about soldiers who've now been there for something like 250 days on a ship. I don't think I'd want that, but reports of bad food. We've got one of the wives of one of the sailors saying that she's getting information from him back home about terrible conditions. One of the sailors jumped overboard. And the USS George Washington, another massive aircraft carrier, is heading to the area and will be relieving the Abraham Lincoln. So we'll see what happens, but just ongoing stress relative to what's happening in the Middle East. Well, MS Now has really got into brought out some reports and details and a lot of numbers relative to the budget deficit that the Republicans are facing as they go into the midterms. And the main cost driving that is Medicare costs going way up, and the interest on the debt is going up $18 trillion there. I can't even think in those terms, and I'm a former minister of finance, and those numbers get behind me. So those are some of the things that the Republicans are going to be facing as they go into the midterms. We kind of been reporting on some of the wilder and more left-leaning elements of the Democrat Party and the Democrat Socialists of America. Watch this week coming up, James Talarico. Now, this is a guy, he's a legislator in Texas. He is running for U.S. Senate for the Democrats, and a gay legislator, and nobody has an issue with that part of it. But what they do have is he uses the Bible a lot. Watch for him this week. He's going to be being asked some questions on that. He quotes the Bible to justify all of the positions that he takes. And a clip of him just surfaced from last year, where he says he wants to stop the teaching, or it sounds like he's saying he wants to stop the teaching of the Bible. It's being forced on students. and he wants to put an end to it. He's kind of backing away from those remarks. When they looked into it a little closer, um, the course that he was saying was forcing people to read, forcing kids to read the Bible, was a course which shows how the English language is filled with expressions and famous lines and quotes, which are actually from the Bible. So it's a tracing of the English language back to biblical roots. For instance, you might say things like "love of money is the root of all evil," and they show the quote where that came from. Or you can't live by bread alone. Sounds like somebody now who's got a gluten fixation, but where all of these, that's where the book, and that's a particular course, and he wants it slammed down. That's coming back to bite him. He's trying to back away from it there, and we will see what happens. Well, talking about backing away, OpenAI, that's Sam Altman's giant company, of course, and moving ahead really aggressively on the whole AI front. They're getting ready for an IPO, for initial public offering, where they make a gigantic amount of shares available to the public. And it was going to be, as it continues to move to that, they're saying the valuation of that company, $850 some billion. That's almost $1 trillion. And now there's been a number of people, key people at the top of that company leaving, and that's got the investors worried. So the investors are calling Sam Altman, who's head of OpenAI, to a meeting this coming Tuesday. So we like to do this broadcast on Saturdays. Like to give you some things that are coming ahead in the week. So watch for that, because the CEO and the CFO and the president of OpenAI are going to have to face some tough questions. It would be amazing now if we see, and would make us wonder, are these AI companies just continue to increase in value at a rapid rate, or is there a bit of cooling off going on? Let's see on Tuesday what happens if the IPO is going to go ahead. Also coming up in the coming weeks, there's just a ruling, and as you've been following this, I know for a couple of years, almost a couple of years here, the Luigi Mangione, this is the nutcase who killed the CEO of the healthcare insurance company, shot him dead, and he has been to court pleading a number of things. They wonder if he's going to plead guilty, etc. So a judge has just ruled last week that they will not accept. They're accepting his defense attorney, saying terror was not a part of this. If it could be also proved that he was involved, that this killing was terrorist related, it could be life, if not a life penalty, depending on the jurisdiction. Definitely imprisonment with no chance of getting out. So we're going to see, but that the court case is coming up. It's September 8th, and in the particular proceedings, because Friday was the first day he actually did a full appeal, and the wife of the CEO who was killed was actually in court. And to see all of this unfold, it's really heating up. We'll see what happens. On the situation with, we've been talking about what's happening with the Democrat Party and the Democrat Socialists, and they're getting wackier and crazier all the time. It's come out now that yet another person has quit the top ranks of the Democrat Party. Some of these people you may not have heard of, but they're huge in the United States. And one of the leading Democrats, Evan Barker, has just quit. Evan Barker was principal responsible for the success over the years of Bernie Sanders, who's the leading I guess you would call rampant socialist in the Democrat Party. So Evan Barker just quit and just said they're all getting too crazy, but they stay up in the polls, as we see. I just mentioned Talarico, and he actually, as crazy as some people might say he is, running there in Texas with all his wild left agendas, he's actually leading right now in the polls. So we'll see what happens there. On a sad note, we had talked this week about Jason Arday. This was the professor from Cambridge, black professor, who was discovered that a lot of his story was made up, and he was busted for plagiarism and never repented for it, and had to, Cambridge just this week kicked him out basically and said, you can't do this, you got to tell the truth. A lot of stories about what was a stunning life coming to the surface maybe weren't true. Unfortunately, he took his life this week. We touched on that just briefly yesterday. So while debates can get vigorous and while we go after what people are saying and doing, it's always a tragedy when something like this happens. So Jason Arday and to his family, we certainly have condolences there as we recognize what is going on, just as we have condolences for Paulette Thompson. As I just said, she was the wife of the CEO who was killed, the CEO from United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, uh, had her day, or at least in court, watching the situations unfold there. Another tragic death, nothing to do with politics, but those of you who follow golf, especially women's golf in Australia, Jessie Bang, 18 years old. She's 18-year old, absolutely rocking the women's professional golf world, and died suddenly of a brain hemorrhage. And this just happened. So people were looking to her being the rising star in women's golf, and certainly we have feelings for her family. Well, the first her full-fledged hurricane that might hit a Hawaiian island since 1900. Now, Hawaiian Islands, they get lots of nasty storms and everything else, but this is the possibility of an island being hit. The big island, they say, is on target for an actual hurricane. The Big Island, of course, is also called the island of Hawaii or Hawaii Island. That's where places like Kona and Hilo are found. And watch over the weekend. Watch over the weekend. You're going to see if that island actually gets hit with a hurricane. You talk about hurricanes, Sophie Cunningham, the Indiana fever. And of course, as you know, those are regular watchers and listeners here. She is constantly attacked because she had the courage, I guess it took courage, to say that she thinks biological male shouldn't be in women's sports. And that is such a contentious item in the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association. Of course, she regularly gets just thrashed and smashed on the court. But the reporter John Root is talking about the fact that as she's coming to games now, the first couple times after she said that, she would be booed by the fans, and everybody thought, wow, is she on the wrong side of the issue? But now as she comes to games, a huge amount of people outside the games cheering for taking her stand to protect girls on the field and on the courts and in the shower rooms. And interesting interview there, as John Root reports, some of the leading people in the gay and lesbian movement coming out supporting Sophie Cunningham and in her statements about transgenderism. Of course, as we know, there's a very significant part of the gay and lesbian community that does not like the transgender agenda and speaks about it regularly. Well, this week coming up, you're going to see something, and it's August 20th, so Thursday. There's going to be a ruling in the courts in Ontario. The guy by the name of Linz Joseph. Now, this guy has been working for Dominion Grocery Store. He's from Newfoundland. He works there, and he was busted on 8 counts of fraud and theft. 8 counts of fraud and theft. He was here on a temporary visa. And the speculation is, of course, when you lose that, when you commit serious crimes, as these were serious crimes, then your visa cannot be continued. You've got to go home to the country you came from. And people are going to be watching because the country he came from is not that nice a country, and at least to the parts of India where he came from. And there's some speculation the judge may, in fact, not find him guilty as charged to keep him from being deported back to India. So this is becoming a real concern in Canada, where people who should be removed, this is people who are here illegally and who do violent crime, many times sexual related crime, and a judge is refusing to end their time here and send them home because they think the country they're going back to might not be as nice as Canada. So we're going to watch. That's creating a lot of controversy here. There's been ongoing concern about an exodus, if we can call that, of Jews from Canada under increasing Semitism, and universities not doing anything to stop it. And when these huge crowds, Hamas-related crowds on Canadian streets are out chanting death to Israel, making our Jewish friends very uncomfortable. A very well-known person in the Jewish community, good writer, Beryl Watchman, has a column out today and is saying, putting a little bit of a different side on it and saying, you know, it's terrible. Of course, the anti-Semitism is awful. One of the benefits is, especially in Montreal, where much of the anti-Semitism goes on from the Islamic community, and they are not. It seems as if the government doesn't care and the police don't care. But what Beryl says is that huge support from other communities now stepping up, the Filipino community, Italian community, Jamaican community, standing up and said it is not right to treat our Jewish friends like this. And it's resulted in somewhat of a coming together there. Let's watch this week and see if this type of thing continues. Watch for a reaction this week from those who are running for mayor of Toronto, because the premier of Ontario just won big in court. A lot of people don't like bike lanes in cities, especially if it disrupts their streets and their traffic flow. And the City of Toronto bike lanes under Mayor Olivia Chow have infuriated a lot of people. Entire streets being torn up, neighborhoods being disrupted. And Premier Ford tried to stop that. He's the provincial premier, and he has the ability to do it because, of course, provincial grants flow to the city and they can be stopped. He said these bike lanes have to go, and actually went to court. The lower court upheld the City of Toronto, who said, there was a judge who actually said bike lanes are like a constitutional right. Didn't know that. I've read our Constitution a number of times, haven't read that. But now the appeals court has gone on the side of Premier Ford and says it is true. Cities and people do not have a constitutional right to bike lanes. And if the governing power and the funding power doesn't want them, they can stop them. So now we're going to see. So Premier Ford has won that battle. And we're going to see, watch this week to see if there's notices going out onto what streets might not be torn up and in which ones they're going to take the bike lanes out. Watch this week, because I talked earlier, I said, and more, I'm pleased that the information we get, which gives you insights behind the news at home and abroad and around the world, it gives you insights that you're not going to get from mainstream media. And we talked about the fact that Meta and the wearable glasses increasingly being called pervert glasses, because people are getting really creeped out about the ways in which people use these and where they use them. There's been a number of cases where people have actually gone live on their Instagram accounts while they're wearing the glasses. And the people they're talking to don't know they're being talked to, don't know that they're being broadcast live. And this can happen in, let's say, discrete places or maybe in a changing room. And Instagram now taking steps to actually stop that type of thing happening. And in the courts right now, a number of courts in the US are looking at the question of the legality of filming somebody wearing your pervert glasses, as they're called, and looking at ways to stop that. There was a funny commentary. One person said, you want to stop someone and get them to move away from you, just start singing any Disney song, some of those painful Disney songs, and that'll get people running away from you. Anyway, we'll see where that goes. That's coming up. We're going to see more of that in court this week. Well, Starbucks, you want to watch this right now, because for the next 2 days, depending on your location, they are bringing back for 2 days only the Unicorn Frappuccino. Apparently, this has been a hit on and off through the years since it was first introduced. Now, if it's a hit and it sells well, I don't know why they don't leave it on their menu. But anyway, watch that. Big news there. If you're bored of financial news or news about wars, let's see if the Unicorn Frappuccino. It's basically mango and whipped cream. But anyway, let's see if that does well. Yahoo has done some really interesting reporting covering lots. They did interviews with thousands, apparently, of young people and the parents, saying what people are buying when they go back to school. Number one request among Gen Z going back to school, back to high school, is AirPods. These can, depending on where you buy them or what brand you get, or what model, $250 to $350. That's a big item. And in terms of backpacks, apparently the Black Jan's backpack. Okay, I don't know a thing about it. I know with my grandkids, backpacks are a big deal, but that seems to be a big one. And mechanical watches, just in general, mechanical watches, as opposed to, of course, all of our IT type watches, are really back, and people buying them from not just the repo or the restores, but online at those sites where you can get used material, previously loved material. And again, I told you last week, watch for, apparently it's a real competition in terms of what types of water bottles they're carrying back to school for fashion statements. And I had said, watch for the Lululemon bottle to continue to fall from grace as Aloe takes over. That's still the case. Aloe in the lead in terms of choice of water bottles for your kids, but it's still acceptable. You'll be happy to know to take and use a Lululemon. And watch out. There are reports that Coach bags, never mind the backpacks, are coming up, and more and more people buying them. I don't know where people get the money for these, but there you go. And also, if you're looking for back to school items, matching notepads and pens. Remember I talked this week, I said watch for the increase as more and more people are wanting to use notepads and not always be trying to figure out how to put notes on their devices. So matching notepads and pens, and we'll see how that happens and see what happens there. Sorry, when I was talking about Aloe and Lululemon, I wasn't referring, I was referring to styles there. When I talk about, sorry, somebody just corrected me, and thanks for fans watching and sending stuff in instantly. The water bottles, it's the Stanley water bottle, all right? The Stanley water bottle is still also heading up over the Owala, Thanks for that quick correction there. I don't want everybody rushing out saying, I want to buy a Lululemon water bottle. So thanks for paying attention to that and firing that in right away. And we'll see what happens. And the overall mood of young people, Gen Z, and especially on the female side about going back to school, is to dress so they blend in more than that they stand out radically. We'll see if that's true for going back to work. People going back to work, this would be interns and others going to work in the fall. Sneakers are coming back. Loafers are coming back in more fashion than wearing sneakers with your suit. So you might want to watch that. And very interesting to see Boy George just on the culture scene. Talking about culture. Remember Boy George from Culture Club? You know, he never did go away. People my age remember him, and he's, you know, quite a famous guy, and he still is, and still performs all over the place. And he's going to be performing in September in Vancouver, Canada's at the PNE. That's a huge place. September music acts are always gigantic at the PNE in Vancouver. And there's some people who are protesting, typical, because Boy George, of course, has come out in favor of giving support to Israel and not cheering on the fact that Muslim terrorists slaughtered so many Jewish men and women and boys and girls in the October 7th disaster. And his song, one of his top songs in that regard, is called "We Will Dance Again," referring to the fact, of course, that it was a music festival going on when so many of these young people were slaughtered, murdered, raped, and taken prisoner. And so some reaction because he supports Israel, one of very few in the so-called celebrity and entertainment market. Let's see what happens. The PNE so far has said we've never canceled somebody because of political protests, and they're saying the show is going on. But watch for that this week coming up in Vancouver. Matthew McConaughey and his wife look for ongoing comment as they just had a visit, as you may have heard, with the Pope at the Vatican. It took place a few days ago, and more news coming on that. And he talks about his return to faith, his return to God, and sharing that with the Pope. There you go, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.